What's up, guys? It's Mike from BavhausTV, and today in the shop we have this E46 325xi. It's got a leaking right rear differential output shaft seal, so we're going to show you guys how to replace that. Along the way, we're also doing rear pads and rotors, so we already broke all that down. For the purpose of this video being that we're doing the output shaft seal, you don't have to take all this off, so you can just ignore that we removed everything here. The nut that you're going to have to remove is here, and it can be removed with the brakes properly in place. So as you can see, our output shaft seal is leaking pretty bad on the passenger rear of this E46. Otherwise, it is super clean. You don't see them like this ever. So what we're gonna do is first release that nut on the outside, right there. Then we're gonna lower this sway bar as it's in the way of removing the axle. Then we're gonna remove the 6 bolts that hold the axle in the differential, and then remove the axle entirely. And then we can start addressing the flange and the seal itself, as well as drain the fluid, fill it again, and it should be relatively easy. It's not too big a deal. The nut is a 12.36 millimeter, so we're just gonna put it over and remove it. If you guys don't have a good air impact gun, you wanna push these tabs back, but I usually just rip them off with the impact. So with the nut removed, we can now go lower the sway bar. So this sway bar is held in with two 13 millimeter nuts and bolts. They are always corroded. We're looking at it facing the rear right now. The other one's up there. So definitely spray them down with some penetrating oil first. The nut or the bolt side is up there. And what I do is I take a ratchet with a 13 millimeter socket and then a wrench that's 13 mil and hold one side while I turn the other. And that's the best way to get these off. But definitely spray them down first, or you're gonna snap them and it's gonna leave you in a shitty situation. So here's how I set it up. So 13 millimeter wrench on the rear of the car, and then towards the front of the car, we just do a ratchet, and you wanna counter hold it as you spin it, but you gotta hold it, so, because it's not even up here, so it's gonna knock it off. On the driver's side, I just use 2 ratchets with 13 millimeter sockets because you have a little less room. Afterwards, you kind of just pull down on the sway bar, like down and towards the rear. And then once these tabs kind of get pulled back, you can just slide them off. Same thing over here. Just kind of slide it out. All right. So now you have more room to remove the axle off of the sway bar. Now you can kind of make your own decisions here as to if you want to fully remove the sway bar or struggle with the axle in this position. I've done it both ways. It is definitely difficult to get it out with the sway bar still there. So I'm going to continue with this video showing you guys how to remove the end links so that we can get the sway bar completely out, or at least dropped on this side. And then we'll be able to remove the axle easily. So looking behind the spring, we have this nut and bolt right here. That's going to release the end link. The bracket's gonna stay in place though. You can remove the bracket too with 2 13 mils, or I think it's a 16 mil up here and a 13 on the bottom or something like that, but it's useless. Unless your bolt here is completely seized, then don't worry about those, but these are hard to get to. They're pretty flush and you can't really move much around them, so I suggest just taking a 13 and a 13, spray this down with some penetrating oil and release it. So we have a 1/4 inch ratchet holding it on that side with a short socket, and then just a regular wrench here. And that's the best way to take this out. Once you release both the end links, you can just pull the sway bar down. We're gonna leave it down like this. If you wanna fully remove it, you might be able to juggle it out, but I'm pretty sure you have to lower the exhaust, and I don't wanna screw with that. If you're doing a driver's side axle, you have to lower the exhaust anyway, so at that point remove it. But on the passenger side, just make sure that the end link isn't bound, because they're old aluminum usually and they will snap. And then just let it hang. And now we have nice clear access to the axle. So next, while everything is still put together, we're gonna go with some brake parts cleaner and clean up all of the spill. And then once we got that done, we're going to crack the fill plug and crack the drain plug and drain out all the fluid. You wanna crack the fill plug always first. The fill plug and drain plug are an H14 hex Allen style key. So we have the differential fully drained now and cleaned. We just put the drain plugs back in loosely. What we're gonna do now is unbolt the 6 bolts that hold the axle in place. What you're gonna notice immediately is if you go and try and release these bolts, you're just gonna spin the axle. So we're gonna show you guys a trick that we use to keep the axle from spinning as you're trying to rotate it. And you could pull the parking brake, but it's not guaranteed that it won't slip. So we're just gonna show you a different method. So we put the brakes back together because we needed to use the rotor and the caliper. And what we're doing here is take a screwdriver and you stick it in these fins like this, but in between the caliper and the bracket. So find a fin, you might need to rotate the rotor, and you stick it in like this. Then when you actually go to release those bolts, the rotor is going to catch it and not allow this to spin. And with the screwdriver in place, the axle's bound now. We're just going to put a big 1/2-inch ratchet on this, and they break free. And then anytime you need to reposition the axle so that you can get another bolt out, you're just going to pull that screwdriver out, rotate the axle, put the screwdriver back in. So I'll show you one time. Take this out. And put it back in. And then we're good. So I'm just gonna do this for all 6, and then we'll get the axle out. Once the bolts are out, you're just gonna take the axle up and around and then down. So next we have to get the axle out of the hub. And what we're gonna do is just take our air hammer and put a point tip on it and just hammer it from the center. As you hammer it, you're gonna wanna hold the axle and pull it out so it doesn't fall. So we got lucky and our axle came out super easy. Next, you're gonna have to remove this flange. It comes straight out. You gotta be careful not to bend this backing cover. This dust shield is really easy to bend if you pry up against it. So we have the BMW special tool that goes around this and puts tension somewhere on the differential housing and then kind of pries this out. But if you're gonna pry on it, try to use a location where it doesn't touch this backing plate. This is the special tool for the job. We're just gonna put this against the drain plug, give it some leverage, and then push it in and it'll pop out. All right, you can see how it works. It just pops it out. So now we can fully remove the output shaft flange, and there's our leaky diff seal. So now you wanna observe how deep the seal sits, because you wanna put the new one back in the same location. And then I usually just clean up around this lip on the inside first, which I already did. So we just found one issue that might be the reason why this is leaking. It might have been replaced at some point. But if I measure from the bottom, I get roughly 3.1 millimeters. But if I measure from the top, I get over 6, and it's same on the sides. This is 6 and change, and this is 6 and change. So it's way more seated on the top and on the sides than it is on the bottom. And now looking up close, it looks like it is deeper than the previous seal would have been. There's that little ridge right in there. So I think it's just knocked in a bit too far. So we're gonna try to seat it at like 3 millimeters all around and kind of see what it looks like. Okay, next you wanna take a nice long pry bar, get in just behind the seal, and give it a couple whacks. Like that. Just make sure you're not hitting the inside of the housing, and you got your seal. So this is the part number for the seal kit. It's 3310-7505-604. This is straight from the dealer. It's a kit because it comes with the differential output shaft seal as well as the little retainer clip that goes on the output shaft flange that locks it into the differential. So we'll show you that in a minute. First, we'll just open up this box. And here you go. So there's that little retainer and then the seal. Next, we're just gonna take a little bit of Scotch or emery cloth and just clean up the lip. You don't gotta go too crazy here, but just make it so that when you're driving in the new seal, it's not gonna bind up on any rust or corrosion. You can see up top, it's pretty nasty, so we just wanna clean that all up. So once you got it pretty clean, just go with a nice clean rag and clean up any debris that got in there just so it doesn't end up in the differential. Now, if you look at the lip here, you'll notice that it's kind of beveled right up until that point. So right on this bevel is where you want the outside of that output shaft seal to be. So the seal needs to just be on this flat part on the inside. One thing is you don't want to drive it all the way in because there's a vent up here, like a pressure relief. And if you cover it, it's not going to operate properly. Next thing we're going to do is grab our seal, put some gear oil around the sealing edge here as well as on the seal, and we can start driving it in. So we got some clean gear oil around the lip here and in that lip there. Just going to take our seal and start putting it into place. I like to use the old seal as the driver, pretty much always. So what I do is I take a razor blade and I just cut this lip off, and then it's a nice surface to hammer on. Once you cut all the rubber out, you have a nice metal disc that's the perfect size to drive in your new seal. Then you're just gonna match it up over the new one and start tapping it lightly with a hammer. I like to go flush up against the cover first and then evaluate how much deeper we wanna go. So that's pretty much flush. We're just gonna start driving it in slowly. What I do is I put that other one over, I tap it with a hammer, and just in a circle, light but consistent weighted taps all around should do it. So now we have it set in fully at where that lip kind of bevels in and it becomes flat. So that's the position you want it in. I went around and measured it. It's about 3.5 millimeters roughly. And we're just kind of generally in that area across all four corners. I went and measured again. There, and there. And we're between like 3.2 and 3.5. I'm not gonna try to straighten that out anymore. I mean, you can just see how even it is. And if I hit it with a hammer, I might screw things up. So I'm gonna leave it like that. We can now prep the output shaft flange and get that in. So this is the output shaft flange, and that is the little retainer right there. So you wanna change these whenever you do these jobs. They're a bit of a pain in the ass to get out. But basically what I do is I just get a pick and I'll get underneath it and pop it out. And then once I'm holding it, I'll grab some pliers and then kind of twist it off. I'm not gonna be able to show you because too many hands here. But yeah, just under, pliers, pry it off. Then the new one just goes right over. So this is what I meant. The best place to grab it and get underneath is right on the sides, as they kind of, you can push on this one like out and then get underneath it like here. So you can see the end is right there. You don't want to try in the center. You're never gonna get it. And then now just grab it with some pliers and crank it off. So once you got the old one off, you just take the new one, dead center, and push it, and then it's in. You can see it like sticks out further. This is what actually holds this in place. Now we can just take some gear oil, cover these splines up, and then go put this back in the diff. Now you can take the output shaft flange and put it back in. You might just want to hit it with a hammer first because that spring clip needs to get inside the channel to then actually start lining it up. After that, you should be able to push it into the point now where it's sitting up on the splines. And then just another tap with a mallet will seat this thing in perfectly. You can see it's already making contact enough, but just needs to go in a little bit more. It's another angle. Like that. Give it a tug, see if you can get it out. You shouldn't be able to. And now it's completely locked up. Now with the flange back in, we can reinstall our axle. We're gonna put it into the hub first, take some motor oil to lubricate those splines, as well as the splines on the output shaft itself. So now that the output shaft has some motor oil on it, we're gonna take our new axle nut. The part number for this nut is 334-111-33785. We're gonna pull the axle through the hub and put the nut on. So once you pull the axle through, it might take some maneuvering. The best thing I found to get the axles back in is obviously to lubricate it, but then also just to hit the center here with the axle in like as close to the regular position as you can. I just hit it in the back with a rubber mallet. Obviously, you don't want to damage any of the CV joints, so keeping it straight is really imperative there. But once you get it pulled through, clean up any residual oil, and then just tighten the nut until the gun chucks, and that's enough for now. Now we can grab our axle. You'll notice that it doesn't go back in that way. Gotta swing it back over like before. Let's take the screwdriver out, and we're gonna find the mounting location. So something like that. There's no like orientation of where it actually sits. You can put them in wherever. You want to replace these screws. The torque screws are part number 26117571956, and there's 6 of them. Now we're just going to tighten these up until they make contact, kind of go around in a circle. These M10 bolts get torqued to 80 Newton meters. And just do that for all 6. Still using this screwdriver method to rotate things. Next, we can replace our drain plug. Part number for the drain plug and the fill plug is 33117525064, and they are the same. But we're just gonna start with the drain plug. You just wanna take a little bit of this gear oil and get it around that seal first. Just wanna get it on that green seal. Okay, once it's lubricated, you can go put your drain plug back in. This is going to get torqued to 60 Newton meters. Okay, now we can go to the fill plug, and we're going to fill it with gear oil. We're using Redline 7590. And you just fill it until it overflows. Once it starts dripping, you can put the fill plug back on, and we're gonna torque that to 60 Newton meters as well. So this is the Redline 7590, and we're just gonna use a fluid transfer pump. Basically just suck it out of there. It's got a pump here, fills into there, and then we put it into the differential. So this one took about 1.5 bottles. We're just gonna wait till the dripping stops, and then we're gonna close this thing off. Again, replacing this fill plug and torquing it to 60 Newton meters. All right, next we brought our sway bar end links back up and just tightened those up. We didn't spec them to anything because there's no way to get a torque wrench back there, so we just made them nice and tight. And same thing on the other side. Now we're gonna tighten this nut. It goes to 300 Newton meters. What I like to do is take another tool. I'm gonna use a punch here and assist with the other one. 300 Newton meters is a lot. We're probably gonna bend that screwdriver. So the 2 of them together should hold up. Now you take a chisel and a hammer and knock this little piece into the slot on both sides, and that's gonna secure it. Once you're done, hit it with a paint mark. Lastly, you just gotta put the sway bar back up and reattach the bushings with those 2 13 millimeters. I don't think these really require a torque spec. I'm not sure what it is, but I just went nice and tight, even tighter than they were on before. So that's how you replace a differential output shaft seal on a E46 325xi. It's probably gonna be very similar for other E46s, just a different style of axle on non-X-Drive vehicles. But other than that, it's pretty much the same procedure. If this video helps you out, be sure to let us know in the comments below, and subscribe if you guys want. We're constantly dropping BMW related content. And other than that, we're gonna leave all of the parts, tools, and torque specs that we used in the description below, so be sure to check that out. As always, thanks for watching BavhausTV.